Hi guys, so this is part 2 of the video on how to connect to your VMware vSphere hypervisor. I'll put a link here for part 1 on how to set up the server. So this part is going to how to set up the web client, how to access the web client, and then how to use the Windows client as well. So there's two possible alternatives that you can connect to and start creating your virtual machines, and I'll go over the pros and cons of both. So just keep watching and I'll show you guys how to set up, connect to your VMware vSphere hypervisor, and start creating your virtual machines today.
So we're going to start off where we left off in part 1 of this video, and we have our static IP address. We have our VMware ESXi vSphere Hypervisor 6.0 installed and configured with a static IP address. Now let's go ahead and open up a browser, and we're going to go to that IP address, HTTPS. So it's a secure connection and the IP address. So let's go ahead and say continue. We're going to get a few options on this page. The one we're mainly looking at is the two on the top left. Download vSphere client and open the VMware host client. But if you take a look at some of the other options, you notice you can browse your data store. And I'll go over what data stores are in a second. Download VMware Virtual Center Server, which is a great product for managing. So first, let's start out by downloading our vSphere client for Windows. So this is actually a link to a VMware page. That's going to download the latest version of the VMware vSphere client for this version of our hypervisor. So of course you need internet access to do this part. So if we're going to download from VMware, it's going to download an installer. The installation is relatively small. It should just take a few minutes to download and install. This is the traditional way. This is the way it's been done for a long time now. The web interface is something newer. It's been around for a little while, but it's newer than the vSphere Windows client. And they both have great functionality, so you can really use it to whatever you prefer. Really use either option. So once it's done, let's go ahead and open up our newly installed VMware vSphere client. We're going to put in the IP address that we've set for our hypervisor, the static IP address. This is going to be our management port. And then we're going to type in root and then the root password you entered during the hypervisor installation. It'll take a second to connect. It's going to prompt you for a certificate warning. This again, because it's a self-signed certificate, you could always get a certificate signed by a certificate authority and put it in, and that error message will go away. So it'll connect. Once it's connected, it's going to show you a very basic configuration. To get some of the higher end stuff like the fault tolerance, high availability, and the clustering for load balancing, automatic load balancing between hypervisors, Virtual Center Server is really the best product for that. And I might make another video that goes over a Virtual Center Server. So this is what the interface looks like. We click on inventory. And if you want to get right in and start creating virtual machines, this is where you go. So we could go to our server. If you don't have DNS, it's going to list the IP address. But of course, if you have DNS in your network, it'll list the host name of the hypervisor according to IP address. So it gives you a number of options. These are management options to manage your hypervisor. You can see all the hardware configuration you could change, or view, or test, or just view the logs of, or the status of. So for networking, we have the one network port. That's going to be our management port. For storage, we have one data store, which is our local hard drive. Again, if you have SAN solution or NOS or NFS, you can make them data stores on here as well, which is actually great functionality. And depending on how fast you want your virtual machines respond, you might choose one storage solution over the other. So again, you can see the overall health of your system. You get a lot of information in this interface, this Windows client interface, on the general health of your system, configure the networking, the memory, you can configure the storage. So you can do a lot in here. You can also turn on the SSH and the ESXi shell for scripting, and that could all be done through here. If you notice, it's the IP address and then the configuration tab on the right. Now let's go ahead and create our very first virtual machine. We can right-click on the IP address of our hypervisor, and that'll bring up the menu option. And we're going to select New Virtual Machine. You'll get two options here. You could do a custom install or a typical install. I usually select custom because you have more control of the hardware options you are setting. So let's take a look at all the options it has. You can first select the name of your virtual machine. A lot of times this will match the host name, but it does not necessarily have to match the host name. It could be a generic name. Your virtual machine files created are based off this name. Next, we're going to select the data store. I only have one data store in my environment, but this is where the virtual machine files will be kept. The VMX file, which is the configuration file, the VMDK file, which is the virtual hard disk for the virtual machine we're creating, will be all stored in the data store. If you have additional data stores, you could select some for where else you might want to store your virtual machine. Next, we're going to select the virtual machine version, and this is according to what version of ESXi you are running. So if you have many hypervisors in your environment and you want to be able to move the virtual machine between them, make sure you select the virtual machine version that's compatible with all your hypervisors according to the version of ESXi you are running. So don't choose a higher version if you're not have all your hypervisors at ESXi 6. Once you do that, otherwise you will get a warning message if you try to put a virtual machine on there. So let's go ahead and click next. You can select your guest operating system. I'll select Linux. I'm doing a CentOS install. But if you are doing Windows, you go ahead and select any version of Windows listed there. And all this really does, it's going to give you a better guess of what your hardware configuration should be for that operating system. So like Windows Server 2012 have a minimum hardware, disk space, and memory requirement. So it's going to try to autofill for that for you. For Linux, it doesn't have necessarily as hard set hardware requirements as Windows. So we can go ahead and select it. It puts the lowest amount here. So we can increase it from here. So memory 2 gigs. How many processors, how many cores. So again, this is depending on what you're running and how much usage you think that virtual machine will get. What's nice about this is you can come back here and edit the hardware later. You can increase the number of processors, and you can increase the amount of memory later on after the virtual machine is created. So it's really nice that you can configure this on the fly as needed, depending on the needs of your environment. So I only have the one network card. I might do another video about how to configure networking here, but for now, just select the one network card. This is your SCSI bus, the emulation of a SCSI bus. If you're not sure what it is, just go ahead and select next. There's certain instances where it might be useful. We'll create a new virtual disk. So this is the file that will be the VMDK file that will emulate our virtual hard disk for our operating system. And now there's a few different disk provisioning options, so thick versus thin provisioning, and that's how it allocates the storage to the disk. So is it as needed or when the disk is initially initialized or created? I usually choose thin provisioning. It has slightly less performance, but it saves disk space. Then we're going to give you a short summary. And once it's done, you go ahead and click Finish. It will generate your virtual machine in just a few moments. It's actually very, very fast. And again, if you're not happy with this hardware configuration, you can always go back later and change it. So from here, we can go ahead and start our operating system and start installing our operating system. So here's some VMs we have created. So first thing I'm going to do is open up the console. So it's that little shortcut there with the monitor. Once the console is open, let's go ahead and power it on. The default behavior for virtual machines, if not otherwise a CD or DVD ISO is attached, is to boot off the network. And if you have any sort of network boot solution like Kickstart, you can do that. So we can install off the network. But I'm going to go ahead and do it off an ISO. So I'm going to click on CD drive, and you get a number of options. You connect to the D drive, the local remote D drive of your local computer, or you can also access a data store. So I'm going to go ahead and access a local ISO on my local computer. You can upload the ISO to the data store as well. This is slightly faster for a faster installation. So I'm transferring an ISO over the network, so depending on your network speed. In this case, it's not going to be particularly slow. Once we do that, I'm going to go ahead and send an Alt-Control-Delete to my machine, and it will boot off the CD drive because there's no local operating system on the actual VMDK file, the virtual disk. And it's going to do a normal installation like it would do otherwise. If you're worried about performance, a nice practice I like to do is upload my ISOs to the data store, and then every time I need to install Windows or CentOS, it eats the ISOs right there. So it's really fast. And now you can continue on and do a regular installation like you normally do. The operating system itself does not realize it's running off virtual hardware. So anything you do on a regular operating system on a physical server, you could do here. So let's go take a look at the web interface and do the similar things and check out the interface. It's actually very, very nice. So to access the web interface, just open up any browser and go to a HTTPS connection to the host name or IP address where your ESXi hypervisor has been installed. It'll prompt you to log in. Go ahead and log in with your root password and the username root. And it's going to bring you to this web interface. It's actually a very nice interface. So you can check the same thing. You check the status of your host, your ESXi host itself, the hardware. You can do the licensing, startup services, and do users and permissions. Pretty much all the functionality that you would find in the Windows client as well. So what if we want to check out a virtual machine? So we could go ahead and create a virtual machine. And it'll present us with all the same options in a slightly different order, but all the same. So we'll create a new virtual machine. And it's going to ask us the same idea. It's going to ask us the host name of the virtual machines. It could be your OS, which you're actually going to name your host, or just a generic VM name that you would like to assign. So I'm going to call it CentOS Beta. And you can ask how you want it compatibility. This has to do with the virtual machine version number that we spoke about earlier. So make sure that you have compatibility with all the hypervisors you plan on running your virtual machine on. Next is asked for our data store. It's the file system our virtual machine files will be stored on. Our VMX file and VMDK file, like virtual swap. And all our VM logs will be stored on there as well. After that, it's going to do a little more customizing. So all the same hardware options are here. So you could go ahead and edit the hardware options here. You can come back after virtual machine has been created and you could change the SCSI bus, the USB, the number of disks you have. You want to add an extra disk space or expand the disk space. It's very easy to expand the disk space now with these virtual machines. You just go in here and increase it, log into the operating system. Depending on what OS you install, you can go ahead and expand your volume. So again, it has all the summary of information. We go ahead and create our virtual machine. You just have to reload the page and it'll show you your newly created virtual machine. You go ahead and power it on. And we could start installing an operating system on it. You can open up a console as well. So after we power it on, the console option will appear. So let's say we want to install an operating system. So we could go to Edit. And this is where you edit hardware, but one other piece of hardware is the CD drive. So let's go ahead and power it on, and then let's see what happens if we don't have a CD drive. We can open up the console. So if you right click on that, you get additional options. And the same thing, the same option of doing a network boot as we saw in the Windows client is here as well. So let's edit the options and go back and modify our CD, DVD options. The options here are slightly different than the Windows client. You can connect it to a remote CD drive, or you can connect it to a ISO on the data store. So I don't see where it connects it to the ISO on a remote system. So I went ahead and uploaded my ISO to the data store, which I like to do anyways because it's much a faster install. So I'm going to select that, click Save, and Connect. So make sure it connects right now. And I'm going to send it Alt Control Delete. The reason I send it Alt Control Delete and not a reset or power off is sometimes it will disconnect your ISO. So it's kind of like ejecting your CD drive. Go ahead and reboot, and we're going to start our OS installation. Same thing. It's going to have a full console here, full mouse interface, full keyboard interface. It's actually very impressive how they did this. And if you go on and install the virtual center server, there's even more functionality.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.